It's on. All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Uh, it is Wednesday morning. You know what? Hold on a second. It is no, it's not Wednesday morning. It's Thursday morning, March 11th, 2011, and that was 10 years ago. Um, my computer isn't connecting here, so I'm not able to see everyone's names. I don't know why I'm not connecting to the internet. But it's March 11th, 2021. That's why I'm a little distracted trying to get that to connect here. And I hope you're doing well this morning. I want to say good morning to everybody. I may just catch everyone on the back end if this doesn't all load here quickly. But I can try to go by memory and say hello. I hope you're all doing well. I'm really grateful. I am thankful that every day that we do this together. It's meaningful. It's meaningful to us to be digging into God's word, to be building our lives upon His word, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful for your faithfulness. I'm thankful that 5 days a week we're in our daily manna, and for the vast majority of you that at some point in the day that you're here with us. And so I pray that in all of our lives that this is fruitful, that this is producing something beautiful in us, and I believe that it will. I'm not just saying all those things to pass the time, although I was hoping. Here I can see that the Eddies are on. Good morning to Lauren and Levi and Valor and Haven and Everett, and good morning to Dee, and good morning to Kathleen. Good morning to my mom. I say good morning to you in advance. I just don't understand what's happening here on YouTube, why it's just not loading at all. And Antonio, I don't have my phone, so maybe you can pull that up and you can just tell me. All right. Hey, Mom. Hey, Kelly Kenfield. Oh, Kelly's on this morning, and let me say hi to Kelly Woods and Melody. I always remember Kelly with Kelly. Ron and Amy and Sonia and Margarita, and I'm sorry, Mignon and Rashad. Good morning. Good morning to you guys. John and Jan. They probably said, "Hey, gang," right? John probably wrote, "Hey, gang." Good morning, gang. See, I called it, and I'm not even looking at it. And to Jerry and Janet Devon, good morning to you. Yes. Okay. Hey, Kelly. Ellen and Richard. Good morning to you guys as well. I hope you're doing well. Good morning to Rachel in Ohio, and let's see. Yeah, someone the other day, one of my boys was looking, and they were like, "Who's R. Nixon?" Because they thought it was Richard. They're like, "Is that Richard Nixon?" I'm sure you get that. I don't know if you were going for it with just putting the R. Nixon as your name. A good morning to Lori in Indianapolis. And we have Dayspring in Scotland, and I know Charlene is in Mexico right now, so buenos dias, and I'll say to Elva as well, buenos dias in Mexico, and to Barbara Callahan, good morning to you, and Jim and Sarah and Nicole, and shalom to Steve, and who else we got? I did say hi to Dayspring. And we got, and good morning to Elizabeth and Philip and Salome and Jesse and to Sonia and Naum and Sarah. And is that everybody? Okay, and Pastor and Sister Martinez, I'll go ahead and say good morning to you guys as well. And let's see. Yeah. Okay, I did say I did pull up HNB Live. All right. Okay, so that's everybody. That's all everybody as far as I can tell. And yeah, I can't figure out why I'm not loading YouTube this morning. That's super weird. And we're in. Oh, did it just now load? I closed that window and reopened a new window, and there we go. All right. All right. Let's see here. Oh, Ruti. I didn't say hello to Ruti. Good morning, Ruti. I missed you. And okay. And I think Hmm. Oh, that's exciting news. The Chosen, the show The Chosen season 2 just finished filming. Antonio just told me so. So that's been a year since we watched that. Almost a year since we all watched that together. All right, that's enough chit chat. Let's get into the Word this morning. And we're in 2 Peter. We did the first 2 verses yesterday, just kind of giving an introduction. And hope you were, if you missed us yesterday, hope you were able to catch up. But First Peter, Peter was addressing a community that is really being persecuted. They're really facing a lot from outside. And so that's really the focus of First Peter, is how do you live in the midst of live as a persecuted believing community? How to hang on, and not just hang on and endure, but to endure while walking in the character of Yeshua, that you would have the grace, the empowerment of God to walk out in His character. And that's really what First Peter in general was focused on. Second Peter is not dealing with a congregation that's being attacked from outside, although they are. But at this point, Peter's biggest threat is not, and the congregation, the people of God, their biggest threat is not from the outside. It's from what's happening within. There are false teachers, and so this is an internal threat. Peter is near the end of his life. We'll come to find out later in chapter 1. And so he's saying, as long as I'm alive, as long as I'm in this tent of the body, I'm going to be telling you these things. So he opens up. Simon Peter, or Simeon Peter is how it is written in the Greek, a slave and an emissary of Messiah Yeshua. To those who have received a faith equal to ours, equal in value. We talked about this yesterday, isotimon, which is equal in timon, value or honoring, a precious, through the righteousness of our God and Savior, Messiah Yeshua. May grace and shalom be multiplied to you in the knowledge, in the epignosis, the knowledge, the full knowing of God and of Yeshua our Lord. So again, this letter, it's addressed, it's the second letter. It's likely being sent to the same congregations. It's years later. And he's saying to you who are your faith is of equal value. Now here's Peter, who is one of the 12, it's on this rock I will build my kehillah, my church, my people, right? And he comes and says to the people, your faith is equal to mine, is equal value in the sight of God. Now what he's going to be dealing with through this book is you've got false teachers from within. And so false teachers they're focused on they've got this special knowledge. They've got the special thing. They make you dependent upon them. And so rather than the people feeling like, well, I mean, they're telling us these things, Peter says your faith is equal. Like, know who you are in the Lord and stay focused. So the focus here is these false teachers, and what we'll see through is on combating deception within the body, combating this false teaching within the body. And there were false teachers that were teaching against saying that Yeshua wasn't going to return. They're teaching that there's not going to be a final judgment. There's not going to be a final reckoning when God will hold all people accountable for their choices. And so that kind of denial conveniently allows you, there's not going to be a judgment, there's not going to be a reckoning. It allows them to ignore Yeshua's teachings and ignore the biblical mandate of how we're to walk out our lives. And specifically, you will see Peter address the way that they are regarding their own lusts and their passions. So that would be in regard to money and in regard to sexual immorality. That they're preaching a type of license and a freedom in Messiah that would allow you to just do whatever you want. And these guys, these false teachers, are taking advantage. They're taking advantage of the people of God. They're taking advantage of them financially, making a lot of profit off of them, and they're also taking advantage of the vulnerable, in the vulnerable within the community. So Peter is going to, as he goes through, he's going to make the point that just like he's going to point to Genesis later, and he's going to say, hey, there was judgment, there was a reckoning there, but God is able to bring out, to give you a way of escape for those who are going through it. So there's this promise of this escape that is coming, of the fact that the Lord is indeed going to return. The fact that these false teachers, what they're doing is they're twisting things. They're actually, even at the end of 2 Peter, Peter makes reference to Paul's writings and says, look, they're even twisting what he's saying. What Paul is teaching is correct and true, and they're twisting what he's saying, and they're wrong, and they're misusing it. So he affirms Paul's teaching while disavowing this perversion, this twisting of what Paul is teaching. And all of this likely flows from these teachers teaching what would have been an early form of what developed as a Gnosticism. And to just kind of summarize, you have this idea in Gnosticism. First of all, it's rooted in a kind of dualism that sort of separates your body from your spirit in a way that says that the way it pragmatically plays out says, look, all that matters is your spirit, and what your body does doesn't really matter, because there's not going to be a physical resurrection. Your body is no good, and so all that matters is your spirit. And it's this dividing of spirit and body in a way that really isn't really biblical, honestly. I mean, even when you deal with in the Hebrew Scriptures, when you deal with the soul, it's dealing with the whole person. That this idea that your body doesn't matter, so now you can do whatever you want with your body, and there are no consequences for that. What matters is kind of your spirit, as though you can make this sort of division. And so all you need is this secret knowledge. You need special spiritual knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily have to play out in the outworking of your life, in the outworking of how you live and move and exist in what you do. So that it's a convenient divide that allows you to love the Lord, to know the Lord, and to love the things of God, and to have a special understanding and a special revelation and a special knowledge of God, while not walking, it not influencing your life in practicality. So, in opposition to this idea that all that matters is your spiritual knowledge, Peter then opened up and said, instead of just giving a standard salutation of grace, divine empowerment and shalom be to you, he says, may there be divine empowerment and wholeness in your knowledge of Messiah Yeshua. So what you need to know, and he uses the word epignosis, which it has to do more with a full knowledge, a full understanding, that you would truly know him fully. So may there be shalom, may there be divine empowerment in really knowing him. That's where the focus needs to be. And again, so that holistic knowing of him, that knowing him in shalom and in divine empowerment, is not simply a spiritual knowing that's not connected to the outworking of your life. You have to recall, just because elements of that kind of Gnosticism are still pervasive today. They still pervade the believing community today. And what we have to recognize, and what we often don't understand is, and Giovanni and I were talking about this the other day, is that when we were created, when Adam and Eve were created, and they were in God's likeness in terms of even in their character, but they were created and he said, very good. They were embodied. They weren't disembodied spirits. They were whole and complete in their bodies. God made us so that we are the Hebrew idea of soul is the combining of the body and the spirit, that your entire being, your whole person, and that these are to go hand in hand. It's not to, that's where James says, "You show me your faith. You tell me you have faith, but faith without works is dead." If you have this spiritual understanding, but it doesn't play out in the reality, in the physical, it's empty. It's dead. It's not there. So there's a holism that is involved in walking out the things of the Lord. And so that's where now Peter is going to say, your knowledge, your knowing of the Lord is not some super secret spiritual knowledge, but it needs to show itself in the outworking of your life. And so he goes in verse 3 and he says, it says, his divine power, which is, it's the God power, basically. Tis theos dunameos, the divine, his divine empowerment, his divine power, his godly power, his God power. It's a power that emanates from his godness. If we were to, from his deity, has given us everything we need for life and for godliness. And the word for godliness is eusebion, which has to do with, it can mean reverence or godliness or piety. In the Greek and Roman culture, eusebia, had to do with showing reverence and loyalty to those whom it is due. So it could be the idea of your duty, but it's not supposed to. There's a reverence. It literally means good worship. So he's given you everything you need for your life and for your faithfulness to him, for your walking out good worship to him. Through his divine power has given us everything we need through the epigenosis, through the full knowledge, through that knowledge of him who called us by his own or his peculiar, his unique glory and virtue. And the word virtue is areti, which has to do with excellence of character. So his excellence of character, everything that we need has been given to us. The power of his divinity, in him we have been given everything that we need, through knowing him, through knowing the one who, through the knowledge of the one who called us. So now remember, to this you were called, but remembering that he invited us, that he summoned us by his own or his idea, his peculiar, his specific glory and his excellence of character. So all these other people that are telling you, you need what I'm selling you, right? It's like these folks that are wanting to keep people hanging on with their prophetic words. They're going to have a special revelation, a new special revelation today. You got to keep hanging on. No, we've got the special insider knowledge. And he says, through his divine power, he's given you everything you need for life and for good worship, for your faithfulness to him. Through knowing him, knowing the one who called you. Those folks didn't call you. I'm not the one who called you. Peter says, knowing the one who called you very specifically, his glory, his character. You've got to know him, know his glory and know his character. Verse 4, through these things, through his glory, through his virtue, he has given us his precious or honorable, which it's the word timia. So remember the opening verse where he says, to those of equal honor, of equal value. now this plays on that word. He has given us his value, his precious, the promises of his that are valuable. His precious and magnificent, megista, like majestic, right? His majestic promises, epengelmata, which are, would be his pronouncements out of goodness, out of good news. He is so that through them, through his glory and through his divine character, through his virtue, he has given us these valuable, precious, magnificent promises. Now, again, one of the promises that the false teachers are saying is, he's not coming back. Do what you want. He's not coming back. He's not returning. That's one of the promises that Peter will in chapter 3 say, hey, Lord, some of you are saying, why is the Lord so slow in keeping his promise? It's like, he's not slow as you reckon it, as you count it. Because with him, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. So Peter is start opening up here, saying it's through these things, right? Through his glory, through his virtue, that he has given us his precious and magnificent promises, so that through them, through his promises, because what do you have to do with his promises? You trust. You have faith. You trust in what he said. You trust in who he is. So that we have become equal through our faith in the righteousness of our God and Lord Messiah Yeshua. So here now through these things, he's given us his precious and magnificent promises, so that through them you may become partakers. Now again, this is a familiar word. In Greek, it's a form of the word koinonia, so that you share in common, you are in fellowship, that you are partaking in fellowship of the divine nature, right? Of God's nature. And the word for nature, phuseos, has to do with what is natural, what is instinctive, of the kind. So now you've become, through his promises, by faith in his promises and what he says, you have become in fellowship, in sharing of his instinct, of his nature, right? Because you're new. You've been born into a living inheritance, born anew. He talked about it in 1 Peter. And so now you have been born new. You've been born not with seed that is perishable, but with seed which is imperishable, we read in 1 Peter. And so now you have become partakers based on based on what he has done in you, the renewal of you, and in trusting in his promises of his divine, of his godly nature, of his godly instincts, since you have escaped the corruption that evil desires have brought into the world. So one of the things we'll see in chapter 2, again, one of Peter's principal critiques of these false teachers that have influenced the people of God is that they are dominated by their desires, by their cravings, by their lusts. And it says here that you now you become partakers of the divine nature, escaping from that which is in the world, in the lusts and the cravings, the destructive and corrupt cravings. So there's a changing in your cravings, in your desires, that's what's being transformed in you. So there's a connection. There's not a disconnect between my cravings and my faith, right? There's a wholeness in knowing him, that it will be, I'm partaking, I'm in fellowship with the divine nature. So verse 5, now for this very reason, making every effort, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge. So now he begins this list of virtues that we see in different places, right? When you think of the fruit of the Spirit. But this is kind of building one on top of the other. So the starting point is faith, right? That's the starting point. that we come to him by trusting in him. We come to him by placing our confidence in him, by our faith in Messiah Yeshua. And so it says, and so these things now, all of them, what we're told to do, it says carry along. There's two. I don't really catch it personally when I read it in our English versions. There are two Greek words here. One of them is these are long words, so give me a second here. It's paresenkantes, this has a combination of three words, which is para, eis, and phero, which has to do with, it basically says carry alongside, to carry alongside. And the second word is epikorrigesate, which is typically can be to supply or to give, but it had to do with, it spoke to something that had been given as had been supplied by a benefactor, that had been when they give, it actually specifically has the word choral in it, what was given to these choirs and these choral groups and so forth, that what was supplied, all that they needed. And so it basically says, now to everything that has been supplied to you, the faith that bring alongside, carry alongside with that, or bring alongside to that, to your faith, virtue. So again, the starting point here is faith. And on top of, then it doesn't just end there. That's not the ending point, but there now becomes this building, this growth. And it says to do this, by the way, with all zeal, with all earnestness, spudin, with earnestly, with haste, you want to do this zealously, to bring alongside your faith, which is that which has been supplied to you, a gift from God, to bring alongside what he has graciously given to you, to your faith, bring virtue. Virtue, again, it's this idea of it's a social characteristic that marks the person as someone of consummate excellence or merit within a social context. The person of virtue demonstrates excellence of character, shown in generosity toward others, surpassing what normal constraints of duty demand. So there's a generosity because the characteristics, the nature of God, see, we are now made anew in the divine nature, that we are being transformed, and we should be transformative. That it's not simply be saved in order to get somewhere. We're saved from the corruption, what was corrupting us, so that we can become someone. So we can become like him, not to arrive somewhere, but it's a journey that when we arrive, that we're being made into his likeness. And when we see him, we'll be like him, for we'll see him as he is. But our goal is to be being made into his likeness. So to your character, to your faith, add virtue, the virtue of character and a generosity. And to your virtue, he says, add knowledge. Now this is the word gnosis, and it's not a theoretical knowledge like to know just based on philosophy. And it's not simply an esoteric sort of know the mysteries and the hidden things, but it's pursue knowing him, to know Messiah, that's in that knowledge stands against what he'll in chapter 2, he's going to refer to those who are leading people astray as being like unknowing or ignorant, ignorant beasts, animals. That they're not walking in knowledge of Messiah, but they're acting in animal ways, and that's the idea that ends up happening when you try to disconnect the spirit from the body and say, well, it's two different things, and I can do this and do this, and it doesn't. He's like, no, you need to know the Lord, to know him fully. And to your knowledge, self-control. Self-control. So this is a great word. It's a combo word. Ek and kratos. So we've talked about kratos when we went through First Peter. Kratos has to do when we say like to him be all the power and dominion. That's kratos, the dominion, the rule. So it has to do with like Yeshua's rule, his dominion. He is king forever. So it's saying this should be a rule of self. There should be dominion, mastery over yourself, self-control. So that's the idea that flows from that word. So in regard to all of it, self-control in regard to the passions, in regard to the cravings. So whether that be the cravings of even with food, or the things that are overflowing from a heart of passion, whether that be sexual immorality, or whether that be from a place of anger, that there needs to be to add to, as you know him, that you become like him, right? So there was self-control. And then, so there's this personal restraint. And then to self-control, patience or endurance. The word there is hupomonin. Hupomonin means to, hupo being under, and meno meaning to stand under. So it's an endurance, like a standing under, to remain in place, to hold your ground, to stay where you are, endure. That's the picture there. So you have to have self-control, but as you know him and you walk in his character, there's going to be a mastery, an increasing mastery of self, and there's going to be an endurance, that this is not just a short-term deal. This is not just, when you look at the talk about the temptations that you face, they're not one and done, but you have to endure. They keep coming and they keep coming. So there needs to be an endurance in self-control. And then to self-control, excuse me. I'm sorry. Hold on a second. I was reading what I had read. And to patience, or to perseverance, endurance, godliness. So now that word again, Eusebian, which has to do with, when it's translated in the Septuagint, from the Hebrew Bible, whenever you see Eusebian, in the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, it's referring to the word that's often used for the fear of the Lord, yare, so reverence, worship of the Lord. So it's not simply duty to the Lord, but it has to do with the fear of the Lord, the reverence of the Lord. The word is the beginning of knowledge, is to really know him. And so you're adding now this to that, a walking out in your godliness here is how it's translated, or your fear of the Lord. And then verse 7, and to godliness, Philadelphian, which is the love, familial love, family love. And so that has to, again, that describes sort of, okay, so you got to love one another. You got to love one another within the family. And then to familial love, to Philadelphian, agapin, which is love, which is this overarching, that this is the one that surrounds it all, right? This is love that, of course, is extended to other members of the believing community, and including those throughout the world, but it's also extended to those outside of the believing community. Despite the hostility that's being thrown your way, despite what's being directed your way, that as we are knowing him, we are participating in we are in fellowship, partakers of his divine nature, we're becoming like him. And so you're looking at characteristics that define Yeshua himself, right? And to your trust and to your confidence, right? Add to your confidence and your trust in him, add virtue, walk in excellent character. And to your virtue, know him. There's a relational knowing of him. And then to your knowledge, self-control. That knowledge produces, the result of that knowledge produces a mastery, is supposed to be producing a mastery of self, a dominion over yourself, and to self-control, endurance. and to patience, to endurance, godliness, and to godliness, right? Love. And what is Paul? Paul says, boy, if I can speak with the tongues of, I can be super spiritual, speak with the tongues of men and angels. But if I don't have love, it's useless. I can be like understanding all mysteries. I can know so much spiritual knowledge, but if I don't love, I'm nothing. Because I could give my body to the poor. I can go through the outward motions of give my body and give everything that I have to the poor. But if it's not rooted in love, there's a holism there. It's not simply acts of love. It's a heart that's being transformed and is overflowing in life. It's not one or the other. He says, if that, I'm nothing. I'm a gong. I'm a cymbal. I'm a noise. And so we are to be in increasing measure, and that's what he goes on to say here, verse 8. For if these are yours, if these exist in you, and are increasing, if these qualities are in you and are increasing, are growing. So the in you has to do with, it's a combo word which is hupo arche, which arche meaning beginning or the first. If these qualities are in you from the beginning, they're in you and then they're increasing. They're growing in you. If they are in you in increasing measure. So it's not just I have them all and I'm there. Right? It's like we say, I'm not who I was, but I'm not who I'll be. That I am being formed into his likeness. To divorce the outworking of my character. And again, it's not simply about, checking off lists of, I don't do this, I don't do that, I don't do this, it's about who we are becoming. It's not just simply about what you avoid with self-control and what you endure, but it's about what God's character and his nature expressing itself through us in love as well. It's not either or, it's both and. So if these qualities are in you and are increasing or in an increasing measure, they keep you, if they're abounding in you, basically. It says, then they keep you from being rendered, they keep you from being idle and unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Yeshua Messiah. So there he says, basically, if these qualities growing in them in increasing measure, they will render you or keep you from being rendered lazy. Or the language there, argoi, were the idle people who were lazy and just don't do any work, which were despised, and so that he's saying that if you're not walking in this kind of character in an increasing measure, then those things will keep you from becoming lazy, from becoming fruitless or unfruitful in the knowledge, in the epignosis. So now we have that word again, in the full knowledge, that you can't know him without it bearing fruit. To know him means you're connected to the vine, right? Yeshua says in John 15, I'm the vine, you're the branches. If you abide in me and I in you, then you'll bear good fruit. And you can tell who's abiding in the vine or who's still connected to the vine by the fruit that they bear. That the one who doesn't bear, the branch that doesn't bear fruit is cut off the vine and thrown into the fire. That fruitfulness is an outgrowth or is an expression of the reality of the divine character in me. But again, the idea is I'm not, he says, in increasing, they're growing in you from the starting point, and they're growing, they're increasing, and they're abounding. There's a picture of spiritual growth. And there's it tells us to make every effort to bring alongside. So there is a cooperation that we have coming alongside with what God has graciously bestowed upon us, what he has graciously supplied to us, that he's the benefactor, but now we participate with him in allowing him to produce in us his character, his nature. And so any teaching that that basically says, you're in, you're done, you're good, that you're just fine. One of the things, and we could talk about this a little bit more tomorrow. Well, we will, so I'll just wait. But the issue is character as an overflow of relationship. It matters. You can't divorce the two. Possessing these characteristics in increasing measure, all of them in increasing measure, will keep us from being unfruitful in the real knowledge, in the epignosis, in truly knowing him. And so again, it reminds me of James, where James says, faith without works is dead. Faith without walking it out is dead. So again, this continually trying to divide doesn't work. It's not either or, it's both and. That our faith should be being expressed in increasing measure in our character. All right, well, let me say good morning to anybody that I missed. All right. I may not. I said good morning. Here, there's Sonia. And Charlene, I see you're late, but I said good morning to you earlier in Mexico, so glad to have you with us, and hope you're enjoying lovely Mexico. And I think that's everyone there, and there, and there. I think we're all good. Yeah, I think so. All right, well, if I missed anyone, my apologies. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day. A clean